Have you ever thought about what will happen to your belongings and assets when you're no longer around? It's a question that many people don't want to face, but it's an important one, especially as we grow older. The truth is, deciding how to pass on the wealth we've spent a lifetime accumulating isn't just about numbers. It's about our family, our legacy, and our peace of mind in our later years. When you're in your 60s or beyond, there's a certain clarity that comes with age. You start to realize that time is more precious than ever. You also start thinking about the future, not just for yourself, but for those who matter most, your children, your loved ones. That's why it's so important to make a decision about how to distribute your assets in a way that ensures your wishes are followed and that your family remains united. This topic can be a little uncomfortable, especially in cultures where people tend to avoid discussing life and death. But the reality is, when you avoid having these important conversations, you leave your loved ones with the burden of uncertainty. Imagine for a moment that you're no longer there. What will happen to your belongings, your property? Will your children know your wishes, or will they be left to argue among themselves? This is where planning ahead makes all the difference. It's not just about the assets, but about maintaining peace and understanding within the family. In today's video, we'll explore how to navigate this complex and sensitive subject, focusing on two key moments in the process of distributing your wealth: when you're in good health and when your children have reached a point of independence. These two moments are crucial to ensuring that the distribution process is not only fair, but also thoughtful and respectful. So, let's start with the first moment, the ideal time to address your estate planning, when you are still healthy and your mind is clear. Now, you might be wondering, why should I talk about this now, when I still feel fine and there's no immediate need? Well, the reality is, you never know when your health could change. And when that time comes, it may be too late to clarify your wishes or ensure your property is distributed the way you want it. When you're in good health, with a sharp mind, this is the perfect time to have those conversations with your children. It's often said that Chinese culture, like many others, tends to avoid discussing life and death. Parents often avoid talking about their affairs, thinking it might bring bad luck or create unnecessary worry. But by not having these conversations, you're leaving your children in a difficult position. They might not know what you would have wanted, or worse, they might fight over your property. This could result in family rifts, which is the last thing anyone wants in their later years. I've heard of many families where, after the death of a parent, there was so much conflict over the distribution of assets. Siblings who were once close suddenly found themselves at odds with each other. This could have been avoided if the parents had taken the time to clearly outline their wishes before it was too late. In fact, having these conversations isn't just about giving instructions. It's also about showing your love for your children. You're not just ensuring that your wishes are carried out, you're giving them the gift of clarity. When your children know exactly what you want, there's less room for confusion, resentment, and arguments. You're helping them avoid the stress and conflict that can come after your passing. Take a moment to reflect on this. How would your children feel if after you're gone, they find themselves fighting over who gets what? They might be torn between feelings of guilt, greed, and confusion. The last thing you want is for them to remember your passing with anger or bitterness. By discussing your estate plan now, while you can, you're helping them avoid that. You're showing that you care about their well-being, both now and in the future. So, when you're thinking about your assets, your house, your savings, your possessions, make sure to talk about it openly with your children. Tell them your wishes. Explain your reasons. Make sure they understand that this is about more than just the physical property. It's about keeping the family strong and united. As you have these discussions, it's important to keep in mind one key principle: fairness. This is one of the most common sources of family conflict when it comes to asset distribution. Some parents unintentionally favor one child over the others, either because of emotional ties, guilt, or other reasons. This might seem harmless at first, but it can cause deep resentment among the siblings. I'm sure you've heard of stories where one child gets most of the inheritance, while the others are left with very little, or nothing at all. This can lead to hard feelings that last for years, even a lifetime. For example, I came across a case recently where an elderly parent gave the entire compensation from a property demolition to their son, leaving their 2 daughters with nothing. When the son faced financial difficulties and needed help paying for medical treatment, the daughters, who felt betrayed, refused to contribute. This is a heartbreaking example of how favoritism can backfire, causing long-term harm to family relationships. That's why it's crucial to be fair and just when distributing your assets. It doesn't mean everything has to be split equally, but it should be done in a way that makes sense for everyone involved. Make sure to communicate your reasoning behind your decisions and be open to discussion. This transparency will help your children understand your choices and avoid any misunderstandings later on. Now, some of you might be thinking, but I've worked hard for everything I have, and I want to leave something special to the ones I'm closest to. That's completely understandable. However, think about the impact your decisions will have on the entire family, not just the person you might feel closest to at the moment. By being fair and balanced, you're not only protecting the family harmony now, but also ensuring that your legacy is one of love and unity rather than division. As we continue to explore this topic, we'll look at another key moment to consider when it comes to asset distribution, the point at which your children have reached independence and maturity. But before we dive into that, I want to leave you with something to think about. In order to make the right decisions for your family's future, you need to be clear-headed and prepared. That means having these discussions when you're in good health, with a clear mind, and when your family is ready to listen and understand. Now that we've talked about the importance of discussing your estate plan while you're healthy and mentally clear, let's shift to another critical moment, when your children are independent and capable of managing their own lives. This is another crucial time to think about when you're deciding when to distribute your assets. When we raise our children, we pour so much love, energy, and resources into them with the hope that they will lead happy, successful lives. We want to see them thrive. However, there's a fine balance between helping them and giving them too much too soon. If you give your children their inheritance too early, they might not fully appreciate it or cherish it as much as you'd hope. Think back to your own life. You likely worked hard for everything you've achieved, and it wasn't handed to you. You understand the value of hard work and responsibility. So, when it comes to passing on your wealth, consider whether your children are at a point where they can truly value and manage it. It's natural to want to provide for our children, especially when we know they're going through challenging times. But there's a risk involved in handing them too much before they're ready. When things are too easily obtained, people tend to take them for granted. They may not fully appreciate the sacrifice or the responsibility that comes with managing wealth. One of the greatest gifts we can give our children is the ability to stand on their own 2 feet, to be self-reliant and responsible. And that doesn't mean simply providing them with material things. It means teaching them the value of work, of making smart decisions, and of being grateful for what they have. If you give your children assets too early, before they've reached a level of maturity or financial independence, they may not take proper care of it. They might not understand the hard work it took to build that wealth, or worse, they might feel entitled to more than they need. For example, imagine you give your adult children a portion of your wealth while they're still figuring things out in their careers or personal lives. Without a clear understanding of how to manage the money, they may waste it or use it in ways that don't align with the values you've worked so hard to instill in them. This is where timing becomes everything. Now, you might be wondering, when is the right time to give them that responsibility? Well, there's no perfect answer for every family. But one thing is certain, waiting until your children have reached a point where they're financially stable and emotionally mature will give them the best chance of truly understanding the value of what you're giving them. When your children are financially independent, they've likely gone through the struggles and learning experiences that come with adulthood. They've learned what it means to work hard for something and how to handle both successes and setbacks. At this stage, they'll be more likely to appreciate your generosity and use your assets responsibly. This process of waiting also helps avoid some of the feelings of entitlement that can arise when children receive too much, too soon. It teaches them responsibility, gratitude, and the importance of managing their finances wisely. After all, one of the most important things we can teach our children is the value of responsibility, not just for themselves, but for the family as a whole. I've heard stories from many elderly individuals who say they wish they had waited longer before handing over their wealth to their children. Some regret giving too much when their children were young or struggling because it didn't provide the long-term stability they hoped for. Others have said they feel their children didn't truly understand the sacrifices that went into building their wealth. On the other hand, I've also heard people who've waited too long to distribute their wealth, unsure about when the right time was. This often leads to frustration, confusion, and sometimes even unnecessary tension in the family. It's a tricky balance, but one that can be navigated with careful thought and consideration. And here's where communication becomes key. Don't just assume that your children understand your reasons for waiting. Have an open conversation with them about why you want to wait before passing on assets. Help them understand that it's not about withholding love or generosity. It's about ensuring that they're ready for the responsibility that comes with it. In fact, discussing this with your children now, while you're still healthy and able, can help clear up any misunderstandings. You can explain that you're not giving them everything at once because you want them to appreciate the importance of managing wealth. You want them to have a sense of accomplishment when they are entrusted with something so valuable. Of course, there's no perfect formula, but starting the conversation early can help prevent any hurt feelings or confusion later on. As you know, families can sometimes misunderstand each other, and it's important to make sure everyone is on the same page about your intentions. This brings us to another common scenario that can happen when parents either wait too long or give too much too soon: family tension. Many elderly parents find themselves caught between wanting to provide for their children and feeling that their children should learn to take care of themselves. It's important to recognize that while you want to help your children, you also have a right to live your later years with peace of mind and stability. If you're constantly worried about whether your children are managing the inheritance correctly, or if you feel guilty about not giving enough, it can create unnecessary stress. The key is to find a middle ground. Give your children what they need, but also ensure that they have the maturity and responsibility to handle it. The bottom line is this: timing is crucial when it comes to distributing your wealth. The right time isn't just about when you feel it's time, it's also about when your children are ready. And while you can't control everything, having these conversations early and openly will make a big difference in ensuring that your family stays united and your legacy remains intact. So now that we've looked at the importance of waiting until your children are independent and responsible, it's clear that there's no rush when it comes to distributing your assets. It's all about making thoughtful, informed decisions that are in the best interest of everyone involved. With that in mind, let's explore how to balance your financial stability and emotional connections to your children as we move forward. As we've discussed, deciding when to distribute your assets and how to ensure your children are ready for that responsibility is no small task. Timing is key, but it's also important to remember that there's another critical aspect of the equation: balancing the relationship between your financial resources and your emotional connection to your children. As you move into your later years, you'll likely find yourself reflecting more deeply on how you want to live out your retirement, and the role both money and family will play in that. At this stage of life, many elderly individuals start to realize that while money can offer material security, it's the emotional connections with family that bring real joy and fulfillment. This understanding becomes particularly important when it comes to the issue of inheritance and asset distribution. While we want to make sure our children are well taken care of, we must also acknowledge that they won't always be able to provide us with the level of care and attention we might expect. As our children grow older and face their own challenges, career pressures, raising their own children, financial struggles, they might not be as present or available to offer us the kind of support we might need in our later years. You might be wondering, why should I be concerned about this now? The truth is, the balance between your financial security and your emotional well-being becomes more crucial as you age. Having a solid financial plan in place can alleviate some of the stress of depending entirely on your children for care or financial support. It can allow you to live your later years more independently without the constant worry of whether your children will be able to step in when you need them the most. But here's the thing, no matter how well you prepare financially, you can never completely predict what will happen in the future. That's why it's so important to not only focus on your financial planning, but also to maintain strong, supportive relationships with your children, even if those relationships need to be a bit more independent as you grow older. Money can provide material comfort, but it's your family's love, respect, and companionship that can truly enrich your life. This brings us to another important point, the idea of autonomy and maintaining control over your life as you age. One of the biggest gifts you can give yourself in your later years is the ability to live independently and make your own decisions. This includes having control over your finances and making sure that your wealth is managed in a way that provides you with the freedom and stability to enjoy your golden years. Unfortunately, many elderly individuals fall into a situation where they are financially dependent on their children or other family members. This can lead to feelings of insecurity, frustration, and even resentment, both on the part of the elderly person and the family members involved. It's a tough dynamic. When you've spent a lifetime caring for others, it can be hard to relinquish that role and become the one who needs help. However, the more control you can retain over your financial situation, the more independent you will feel. Having a solid financial plan in place allows you to live life on your own terms, whether that means traveling, pursuing hobbies, or simply enjoying the peace of mind that comes with knowing you are self-sufficient. This autonomy is not just a financial matter, it's about living with dignity and a sense of purpose in your later years. But what about the role of your children in this equation? As much as we value independence, we also know that family connections are crucial. Our children are there to provide emotional support, companionship, and care, but that shouldn't come at the cost of your independence. And just as importantly, your children need to understand that while you may need their support at times, you also want to maintain your own sense of control over your life. The best way to strike this balance is through clear communication. Be open with your children about your needs and expectations. If you want to maintain your independence and continue to make decisions for yourself, let them know. This will help to avoid any misunderstandings or potential conflicts down the line. It's also important to let them know that while you may want to rely on them for emotional support, you don't want to become a financial burden. In many ways, the relationship between money and family in your later years comes down to this. It's about balance. You want to ensure that your children are taken care of, but you also want to make sure that you are financially secure enough to live comfortably and independently. This might mean that while you provide for your children, you also take the necessary steps to protect your own financial future. It's important to remember that your financial security directly impacts your ability to enjoy a comfortable, fulfilling life. We've also touched on the issue of parental favoritism in earlier parts of this video, and I want to revisit it briefly because it's so closely tied to this balance between money and family. Favoritism, even if unintentional, can have a long-lasting negative effect on family relationships. If one child feels unfairly treated or excluded, it can create a rift that is difficult to mend. This is why fairness is so important when it comes to distributing your wealth. I understand that you may feel particularly close to one child, or may want to leave them more because of a special bond. However, when favoritism becomes a pattern, it can lead to resentment, jealousy, and division among your children. This is not just about money, it's about the emotional ties that bind your family together. Ensuring that every child feels valued and respected, no matter what they receive from your estate, can help maintain a healthy family dynamic long after you've passed. It's crucial to address these feelings before they fester into something bigger. Having open and honest conversations with your children about how you plan to distribute your assets and why can go a long way in preventing misunderstandings. By treating each child fairly and with consideration, you help foster an environment of respect and unity within your family. This, in turn, ensures that your legacy is one of love and togetherness, not division. At the end of the day, what matters most is that you create a plan that reflects both your financial needs and your emotional connections. It's about finding peace of mind, knowing that you've made the right choices for yourself and your family. When your children understand the importance of fairness, responsibility, and gratitude, it creates a foundation for long-lasting harmony within the family. So, as we wrap up, remember that money and family aren't mutually exclusive. By thoughtfully planning your financial future and being open with your children about your intentions, you can create a balanced, fulfilling life in your later years. This will not only allow you to live independently and with dignity, but will also ensure that your family remains united, supportive, and strong, no matter what the future holds. It's never too late to start these conversations, and it's never too early to plan for a happy, peaceful future. So take the time, have the conversations, and make the choices that will set you and your family up for success in the years to come. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video has given you some helpful insights as you navigate this important part of life.